Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. What you're seeing here is one of my test bench setups. So this is my DOS test bench setup. Anytime I want to do something with MS-DOS, this is version 6.22, this is the test bench that I put together for it. Actually, this bench stays together most of the time. This mess, while unappealing to the eye, is very beneficial, it's very helpful. I think this can finally go into its own case. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to put this whole setup inside a PC case. So the first thing to do is shut this down, take this apart, and we'll go over all of the parts that are going into this computer, piece by piece. Here are all the components that were on the test bench that I will be putting into the new computer, with the addition of a DVD ROM drive, just because I have discs that I may want to test or put on here or play, and it's just easier to put them straight into the computer and not have to copy them over onto a flash drive or onto the compact flash card itself. I'm going to go over each item and give a brief little explanation of what it is, how well it works, and so forth. And we're going to start with the motherboard. The motherboard I'm putting into this computer is an Asus P5A-B. Released in 1998, this is a Socket 7 motherboard with 512 kilobytes of L2 cache and an Ali Aladdin 5 chipset. This is the AT form factor version with 3 168-pin DIMM slots, 1 AGP, 3 PCI, and 2 ISA. The only port on the edge of this board is a 5-pin DIN connector for older AT-style keyboards. There are multiple headers on the board available to connect additional ports, such as USB, PS2 mouse, 9-pin serial, and 25-pin parallel. This motherboard supports front-side bus speeds of 66 MHz up to 120 MHz. This means we will not be using PC133 SD-RAM, but instead we'll go with 2 sticks of PC100 SD-RAM. Each stick is 64 MB for a total of 128 MB of RAM in our system. This type of memory directly preceded DDR, or DDR1, RAM. The CPU I'm going with is the Intel Pentium MMX 166 processor. This came out in early 1997, so it's slightly older than the motherboard it'll be going into. It runs at 166 MHz and its bus speed is 66 MHz, so the RAM I'm using will be running at a lower speed than the 100 MHz it's rated for. In the future, I will upgrade this to something that allows the RAM to run at its full speed. I'll be using this compact flash to IDE adapter with a 4GB compact flash card as the main storage medium for this computer. On this flash card are two 2GB FAT16 partitions, one of which has MS-DOS 6.22 installed. For sound, we turn to the Creative Sound Blaster AW64. This version of the card was the standard version as opposed to the AW64 Gold. It is an ISA sound card that launched from Creative Technology in November of 1996. It has standard 3.5mm audio jacks on the back for input and output, as well as a 15-pin gamepad or MIDI port. Our video card will be this 3DFX Velocity 100. This card came out in mid-1999 and sports 8 MB of SG RAM, an AGP 2X interface, a single VGA port on the rear, and DirectX 6.0 support. For removable storage, we'll be using this Sony 1.44 MB floppy disk drive and this Samsung DVD ROM drive. The floppy drive has a beige faceplate instead of black like the rest of the case, so that's unfortunate since it won't match, but perhaps I can fix that in the future. Lastly, our power supply will be an Antec 380 watt non-modular power supply. I won't be using the 230 watt supply that was powering this setup on the bench because the form factor would not fit in this case. Instead, I'm going with the next most powerful ATX power supply I have, and this 380 watt option has all the necessary power connections I need, and then some. Now that we've taken a look at all of the components going inside the computer and the power supply we'll be using to power it, the only thing we need now is a case. Now the case we'll be using for this build is actually one that we've seen before on this channel. If we look back at my very first video where I was disassembling a computer that I had gotten back from a friend, we saw this case. And this is what we're going to use for this particular build.
Once it gets some cleaning done, this actually wouldn't be a bad one to throw a test rig in.
It's very plain, ordinary, does not have a lot of bells and whistles. It's old. I believe I got this case in 2008. So this is 12 years old now. But if we open this up and take a look at it again, we have all of our front panel connectors. It does need a clean, so we'll be doing that next. So unfortunately during this build, I will not have an I/O shield for this motherboard because it did not come with one when I received it secondhand. And the I/O shield would simply be plain with a single hole in it, so I could very well make one myself. However, I did find recently on vogons.org that somebody had gone and made a bunch of 3D printed templates for all the different arrangements of back panel I/O that some of these 90s and 2000s computers come with, including one with just the single hole for the AT keyboard, the DIN connector here. I won't have that for this video, but that'll be coming soon. Well, first things first, we gotta clean this up because this is kind of gross. So let's get to that. So that's the case cleaned up. I'm not too worried about the little scrapes and other blemishes on this case, but it is cleaned out as much as I'm happy with. So we're going to start by getting the components installed inside. I got these in the right spot. We'll go ahead and get that installed next. Now that everything is installed and connected, we're going to do a quick power on test. Don't worry about how messy the cables look right now. I'll take care of cable management after we see that this actually works. But here we go. Before I do that, this USB cable is going to a hub as part of the monitor, and that's what I have the keyboard hooked into. I'm not utilizing the 5-pin DIN for the keyboard or the PS2 header for the mouse. I might do those later, but for now, I just took the front panel USB plugs here and plugged them into the appropriate USB headers on the board. So hopefully we have a working keyboard through USB, although we are only running DOS, so we'll see. Here we go, 3, 2, 1. Great, that's the BIOS for the video card, Velocity 100, 8 megabytes of memory. And you can hear that the CPU fan, or the fan on the CPU cooler running. It's quite noisy. I should look into a replacement for that. But it's seeing the Creative Sound Blaster AW64 card. It is seeing a compact flash card and the DVD drive. Keyboard error or no keyboard present. That is unfortunate. Alright, I went and got another keyboard. Alright, so we're going to boot into DOS now. 131 megabytes of RAM. It sees the sound card, the compact flash, DVD drive. I don't have a mouse right now, so yeah, we'll do expanded memory, mouse, and CD-ROM. By the way, this MS-DOS startup menu is courtesy of Phil's Computer Lab. He has a channel on YouTube with a bunch of fantastic videos. He also has a website with a lot of resources if you're getting into making or building or just playing around with your own retro PC. This I got from his site, and this startup menu allows you to choose whether you want to use the conventional memory, the extended memory, or the expanded memory, but also gives you the option of loading drivers, generic drivers to control a mouse and for a CD-ROM in DOS. And if you don't have a CD-ROM, you can just do the memory with the mouse, or if you don't have either, just expanded, extended, conventional. Since I don't have a mouse, but I do have a CD-ROM drive, so we'll do expanded memory with the mouse and CD-ROM. I currently have Sound Blaster drivers on here, as well as a CD-ROM driver and a mouse driver, even though I'm not using the mouse. But we've reached the prompt for DOS. We do a quick directory look. But this is great. We can get into DOS without a problem. Let's do a reset. And here's hardware info, version 4.78 for DOS. And this gives a quick rundown of all the specs of the computer. It's running a Intel Pentium MMX at 166 megahertz. This says 167. Okay, so I've cable managed as well as I could. There's not a lot of space between the backplate and the side panel, but I was able to get it on. It's bulging out in some spots, but it's in place and it's secured. But let me just go ahead and get some covers for this guy, and then we'll close it all up, and then we'll wrap this project up. Slot covers are now in place, and lastly we'll put on the side panel. This side panel is interesting because it has this funnel for the CPU fan cooling, I guess, which doesn't really work now because it's not where the CPU is, since it's over here. So I guess I don't really need it, but I'll leave it on there just so I don't have extra parts laying around. It's a little warped, so it's not going on very well. I'm gonna have to lay this down, let gravity help. There we go. Alright, we got some thumb screws that we'll use to hold this back panel on. And here we go, as is. This is our retro PC in a proper case. I don't have a proper black front panel for the floppy, but I might change this in the future. For now, it's fine. And there we have it. Everything up and running properly. One of my favorite games for DOS is Chex Quest over here. And everything seems to be running just fine with the CPU and the graphics card that's installed. Things to fix in the future include getting a mouse working, moving the PS2 mouse port to the external, and possibly some serial ports. If I can get USB on the back panel, that would be great. I look forward to bringing you some more content from this computer, as well as putting some of my other test benches into other computer cases. But thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.